Donald Trump, cover star. He's certainly used to it. Time magazine has named him Person of the Year. In a wide-ranging interview, he paints a picture of how he'll govern. Yeah, we should all be thinking unpredictability. Trump is apparently breaking with expectations when it comes to specifics on a wide range of issues, immigration and drug regulation. Just to start, here to discuss it all, our panel, we have Julian Elsier. He is a historian and author of professor at Princeton University. Alice Hannikin, he is a political analyst. Harlan Hill, a political consultant and a former supporter of Bernie Sanders, who now supports Donald Trump. And finally, Hank Scheinkoff is a Democratic strategist. Thank you all. I mean, Julian, first to you, we have Time magazine picking him as the Person of the Year, no-brainer. If they didn't, that would have made news. The thing that was really interesting here, though, was they said, look, this is a man who gets a divided nation. Trump pushing back and say, hey, I didn't divide it. Don't look at me. I'm going to bring it back together.
Well, it's true he didn't divide it. The nation's been divided for a while. The parties have been polarized for a while. In fact, one of the secrets to his success was that he capitalized on that, and he played to it. He certainly fueled the divisions, though, and I think if he wants to deny that, it will be hard to look back at the record and agree with him.
Harlan, to you now, someone who went from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party. I mean, this did not sound like a man who was going to be easily boxed into the dogma of the Republicans or the Democrats. It really was incredible when you heard the context of that Time interview, the kinds of policies. What do you think? Are you happy with what he's doing? Because I can bet you there'll be a lot of Republicans who are saying not so happy about what he's saying.
There may be a lot of mainline Republicans, traditional Republicans that are not happy, a lot of neocons that aren't happy with his direction, but I think that there are a lot of mainstream Americans. I think there are a lot of Trump voters, most Trump voters, will actually, I think they'll appreciate what he's doing. It's a third way, nonpartisan. You know, he doesn't fit into a traditional basket as a candidate, and I don't think he'll fit into a traditional basket as a Republican either.
And that may be difficult for a lot of people to handle. Ellis, okay, we've got deficits. Let's run them up. That's pretty Democratic right now. Drugs, bring the prices down. Pretty Democratic of him. And the Dreamers. He's even come back on giving these children who were brought here illegally perhaps a path even to citizenship. He hasn't said what it is yet. Extraordinary, really. This is borrowing, in some cases, from Bernie Sanders' playbook.
Yeah, can I throw the brakes on it just to one?
Go for it.
I agree with you on the rhetoric. It's all over the place, and some of it, frankly, is a bit contradictory. But when we look at the things that Donald has actually done, which up until now essentially involves some appointments, right? I don't see a lot of liberal Dems in that group. I see a group of secretaries and other people who are pretty much in the normal basket of people that Republicans appoint to administrations. I think that matters maybe more than the talk does.
And Hank, when we're looking at this kind of transition, though, whatever he's done now, if we look at his appointments, because you're right, he's only giving us some insights, we're getting a play-by-play here. It's like a Twitter effect, and it's all out on the table. It's like, yeah, I spoke to this person, this is what I think. I did this, and this is what I think. I mean, how do you think about this as a transition strategy?
It is quite clear that the rhetoric is meant to outrule the act itself. And if we look at the people being appointed, and we look at what his rhetoric is, they are in direct opposition in most cases, and you can look for conflict within him. Now, who's going to smooth this over? One, Rance Priebus, who represents the elites in the Republican Party, and who's going to smooth it over on the other side? Bannon, who represents the alt-right. Those are the people he's talking to. That's his constituency. Everybody else, well, they'll have to hope they get their due.
But, Julian, isn't there going to be a reckoning here? I mean, at the end of the day, we can all look to policy results within a year or two and see what's gone on.
No, there will be. I don't think there's a lot of evidence that he's all over the place, though. I think he's picked a pretty conservative cabinet. Today we learned that he has picked an anti-environmentalist to head the EPA. And so this sounds a lot like Ronald Reagan in many ways, not like some moderate and not some liberal Rockefeller Republican. That's not what we have there. So there will be a reckoning. The question is, do these policies satisfy the voters in Michigan and Wisconsin who turn to him for economic assistance? I'm not convinced that's going to happen, but there will come that day.
Harlan, in terms of what we heard from both Today Show and Time Magazine today, he's saying that, look, I'm talking to President Obama. I like the guy, and more than that, I'm listening to what he has to say. How much of that do you think is just him being polite or him actually taking that information in? We can't be sure. We don't even know how many times they've spoken.
Since the election, Donald Trump has been nothing but respectful to Obama. And I think that demonstrates that he's willing to put aside the partisan aspects of their relationship and be cordial and learn from him. But I think that from day one, as Governor Pence has said in previous interviews, they're going to pull out the pen and they're going to reverse a lot of the regulation. They're going to reverse a lot of the taxes. They're going to reverse a lot of the failed foreign policy of the Obama administration. And so don't let that fool you. Don't let that blind you. He's going to be aggressive in reversing the last 8 years, which I think have been a failure for the American middle class. And so, yeah, they're cordial. I think that's great. The peaceful transition of power is really encouraging. But I think that we're going to have a 180 from this administration.
Hank, extraordinary what Harlan's saying. You're saying that, look, terrible for the middle class. We've now got a cabinet of billionaires and generals. Let's be clear.
It is ridiculous to say that this is bad for the middle class of and by itself. New books, new data, important scholars are making the point very clearly. This decline of the middle class loves labor's love lost.
Then why didn't we get a third Obama administration?
May I please finish what I'm about to say?
The voters disagree with what you're saying.
I'm telling you what the research shows. I'm a political scientist. I'm not a moron.
Yeah.
Go back. The research is pretty clear about the decline of the middle class in this country over the last 50 years. This is not new information. It is very clear. These appointments are billionaires, part of the 1%. The proof will be, as I was a kid, we used to say, don't watch the mouth, watch the hands.
And watch
researchers.
But seriously, Harlan, hold on a second. Watch what happens in the areas where Donald Trump may diverge a little from that orthodoxy. I mean, look at trade policy, for instance. Do you really think we're gonna end up with a situation where there's no more free trade in this country? Business wouldn't stand for
He's not even saying that.
Harlan,
come on,
chill a second.
Because you're totally misrepresenting him.
Don't you think that in the end he's got to get the real stuff through the Republican Congress? Those guys aren't changing their minds. They're not rolling over for Donald. This, in the end, is going to be a Republican administration fundamentally.
Harlan, just quickly, Harlan, look at his pick for Governor Branstad for U.S. Ambassador to China. Doesn't that prove that, look, there's not going to be a trade war with China?
Well, what I believe is that he's willing, and I think that as we've seen with the tough rhetoric and his willingness to talk to the president of Taiwan, he's willing to go where previous administrations hadn't. He's said that he's willing to impose tariffs if the Chinese continue to manipulate their currency and if we're not competing on a level playing field. So I believe the rhetoric. I believe what he's saying.
Okay,
you can point to cabinet picks, but that doesn't say, sorry.
We've got a record of that now. You be clear.
Yeah.
We're going to come back and talk about all this again, and especially public audition, as we've been saying. Donald Trump insists Mitt Romney is still in the running for Secretary of State. Can't wait to hear what the panel says about all that. Coming up.
Established in 1992, we have been